welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast, the podcast where we have candid conversations with women sharing their amazing career journeys. My next guest is Ellen, who's the global product manager at the Lego Group. We all love Lego, and I'm really excited to have Ellen here today to tell her story because we met at a dinner, isn't it, Ellen? How are you?
Yeah, that's right. We met at a dinner a few weeks ago. It was so nice to connect. I think we matched over our glasses. Dame recognized Dame in the glasses
Yes,
department.
I see you. I see you.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. And by the way, so I'm wearing Tom Fords. What are you wearing glasses wise?
I am wearing, these are called Firmu. It's an online service. It's nuts. It seems like it shouldn't work, but I have to match all of my glasses to my outfit. So I need to have, 5, 6, 7
Multiple
pairs.
pairs. Yes. So do you just put in your prescription and then really good pricing so you can have different colors, different this and that?
Exactly right. Yeah. So they've got like a virtual try on that I use. I know that I've got the widest face, so I look for the widest lenses and then we go from there.
Same. Yeah. I feel you. Yeah. My goodness. And by the way, audience, we're not being sponsored or paid by it. We're just, sharing tips of where we can get affordable frames as well. So that's
Exactly.
always good. Definitely. Well, let's start really from the beginning because, I always look at people's LinkedIn profiles, or you look at what you see, or you see someone's title and you say, how did they get there? So let's just really go all the way back and just talk to me about your early years and your career journey and just about what's actually led you to this point in reflection.
So it's definitely been a journey, I would say that. I'm from the west of Ireland. I'm from Sligo, from the west of Ireland, where when I was growing up, things had certainly progressed from you're a woman, so you're going to be a nurse or a teacher. We had gotten a little bit past that. But definitely people still were talking about very tangible careers, like being a doctor, being a teacher, being a lawyer. So my go-to was I was going to be a teacher. I did a degree in environmental science in order to do so. So I wanted to be a geography teacher and an agricultural science teacher. And for anyone who doesn't know what agricultural science is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the science of being a farmer. And at the time, I did kind of seek information from one of my teachers to say, well, what did you do at university? How did you get here? And he said, I did environmental science. You shouldn't do that. You won't like it. But the easiest way to get me to do something is to tell me don't do it. So obviously I was like, well, I'm going to do environmental science. And he was right, I didn't like it, but that was my degree. And when I finished, I think there was certainly an absence of those corporate roles that you see today around sustainability and around kind of that circular business operation. So you very much were going either for really, really competitive roles within corporate organizations that looked like that, or you were going to be an actual scientist, like you were in the river, you were in the lab, neither of which appealed to me. So I went back to the drawing board a little bit. What that culminated in, I think, was me landing as an operations administrator in a business, which was a small business. Definitely wasn't going to be long term, but I think it was definitely an entry point for me to say, oh, this is like an interesting avenue that I didn't even really know existed. This is an interesting sort of career that I could build around something that makes sense to me. So just like, how does the business operate? How are we getting things where they should be? Is there a way that all of this is written down? Is there a way that everyone is following the same process? That all really made sense to me. So I thought, okay, operations, this is a safe space for me. From there, I kind of went into, so I did a little bit of time in quality management. I did some time in procurement and pricing, all for a distributor. So kind of still within the realm of business operations. And I came to, I think, just about my 3-year anniversary of that, which is when I joined Farfetch. So I went fully back into operations management and project management for Farfetch, where I stayed for about 3.5 years. 3.5 really good years. And going into Farfetch, I knew that it was going to be a very steep learning curve from where I had been. I'd probably just, I'd say, got my feet under the table and thought to myself, yeah, I know what I'm doing here. Like, this is okay. This is groovy. And then it was March 2020 and it was COVID. And then nobody knew what they were doing. And it was panic. How are we going to keep the doors open? How can we keep servicing these customers? How can we keep everything on an even keel? It was challenging.
I was going to say, from the environmental science journey, where I'm sure there were lots of transferable skills which have sort of helped you in the operations and fulfillment sphere, attention to detail, understanding process, understanding something from A to B, but now landing at Farfetch, which is a tech company that was doing fashion. I mean, and then COVID, where obviously everyone was at home who had copious amounts of money. Just ordering things they didn't need or ordering things they needed to escape to other countries where there was no lockdown. How do you navigate even being in that space?
It was definitely very challenging, but I think I'm always sort of the person that doesn't really realize the building is burning down until the end. I'm like, this is fine.
Bring it
as
on.
long as we can get one foot in front of the other, we can kind of keep this moving. And like you say, there were, customers were sitting at home. They still had birthdays. They still had anniversaries. Like all of us, they still thought, oh, when this is over, I'm going to take up surfing. So they were still making those purchases. And luckily, we had a really fantastic team behind us that helped us to facilitate a lot of those changes. But it was a huge amount of change over the course of 18 months. So within that, I think I kind of took on, I'm a big side mission girl. That's like very much what I'm all about, is taking on all of these little side projects. So I started to take on, bits and pieces outside of the day-to-day running of the operation, looking at our e-commerce packaging, for example. So was there a way that we could make that more sustainable and still really maintain that luxury feel, that luxury experience for customers? We opened warehouses, we closed warehouses, we moved stock around. And I think while we were sort of in virtual meetings, Brexit happened as well. So we took a look at how we were doing that. And is there a more intelligent and more sustainable and more cost-effective way of getting our stock where it needs to be, or having it in the right place to begin with? And all of that was chaos, but in the best way. I absolutely loved it. But it kind of came to the point at which I said, okay, I've learned, I think, all I'm going to learn. It definitely was a baptism of fire, but I got there. So I looked for a new role. And I think this role at the Lego Group came up. It was just exactly the right time. It heard the right role at the right time. It had some specific initiatives like packaging, like channel growth that I had worked on within Farfetch. So I thought, yeah, okay, this aligns quite nicely with my experience. But obviously coming from where I was a project manager at Farfetch into what was then the global e-commerce operations manager at the Lego Group, it's quite a gap. But I was like, okay, let me just send an application. Let's see what happens. What's the worst they're going to say? It's going to be a no. And then sure enough, they came back to me. I was delighted to even have an interview. And I think as soon as I started to have that conversation with them, I kind of found that this was the right place for me. It was the right culture. It was looking at the right things in terms of what I wanted to do next in my career. And I think I had the right experience to offer them in return.
Just in hindsight, so obviously you were at Farfetch, and would you say you actively sought projects to get involved in? Because a lot of it, when I'm talking women who've had more experience in their career, they're saying you have to put yourself out there. You can't wait for the opportunity to come to you. So was it one of those where you saw some projects happening and you said, actually, hi, I stand out, I love these kind of things? Or was it you were thrown into it and you just took it as it came?
I think it was probably 50-50, to be honest. At Farfetch, there was a very entrepreneurial spirit, with it being kind of, we were just coming out of that startup mentality. We're going into a little bit of a bigger organization. So there was still a lot of opportunity for me personally to say, hey, this seems like a good idea and a good opportunity. Can I run with it? But similarly, I think certainly my leadership recognized it in me as well and would pass the ball back. I think when they would have conversations with other areas of the business to say, oh, we're looking for someone to represent that, though we've got just the girl, she only does strange projects that are seemingly unrelated.
There's always one who's saying, would you be interested in this in the room? And someone's lifting up their hand saying, I'd love to take that on. But I guess that's how you grow and mature and, develop your toolkit of skills that you are now utilizing at the Lego Group. And it's not a fashion brand. However, you've found a business from what you've just said where your skills and experience is aligned, but also the direction they're going as a business is aligned with what you'd love to do as well.
Absolutely. And I think there's all of these projects. At the time, I'm thinking, how am I going to turn this into anything? How am I going to turn this into a learning experience? But I think even the most nebulous connection that I can come up with has always come back around at some point or other. There has always been an opportunity for someone to say, how big should the choir get on this cardboard be? And we go, you know what, actually, I know. So now I've got that piece of information. And so I do think that all of these little side projects that I've been taking on have all contributed to a really random but really well-rounded mix of experience and skills, which makes me, I think, a little bit of a unique candidate when it comes to looking for that next role.
Yeah, I remember when I was working predominantly in the fashion industry and we had to sign off trade show stands and what size, and working with a very good friend of mine who's in VM, and she was teaching me all these things. She was like, so what do the fixtures need to look like? What's the square footage? What do we need in terms of assets? Is it MDF? Is it? And I'm just looking, wow, all of these things that I did not know, that actually now I'm utilizing them in ways in my own, renovating a home. So if someone was to say, right, we're going to a trade show, I understand what, a shell scheme is or something that you have to build yourself. It's all those things, you connect the dots afterwards, not while you're, actually doing the do, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I love about it, is kind of putting together, looking back and sitting back and saying, okay, I can see how all of those knit together.
So throughout your career, you must have had some challenges that you've encountered. Is there a particular, scenario that you love to describe them? What do you think are the things that helped Ellen in the back of her mind and head to say, okay, I'm going through this and this is how I've gotten over the other side?
Definitely. I can think of countless challenges, particularly when we look at that period of COVID where everything was new. No one really knew the answers as to how we were going to get it. So it was an opportunity to kind of take a punt on quite a lot. In terms of how I navigate challenges, I think it can be a little bit chaotic. I'll be totally transparent. I very much am a case of, okay, we can only know as much as we can know. So I've been known, and I have to often warn my team that this is how I do things, is I just do quick fire questions to understand, what do we know right now? What's our current status, and how can we take in as much of that information and put it together in as cohesive a way as possible? And then just sit and take 10 minutes to digest all of that, which has been known to freak people out for going, yes, okay, but can you get there a little bit quicker? I'm going, no, I need the full 10 minutes to sit and just kind of digest. And in the moment, I think that's the easiest thing that we can do, is to have all of the information that's available to us and make a decision based on that. And I think that make a decision and go is another key aspect of how I manage things and how I operate. I'm not necessarily someone who can kind of take all of this information and then I go to, this person and this person and this person. We get 8 people all to come up with their thoughts on the matter and come up with a consensus. I'm very much driven by my thought, so I will just say, look, this is what we're working on. Let's go for it. Let's try this and we'll see what happens. And it's either going to work, and in which case, great, we've got away with it, or it's not, in which case we're going to learn from that and readjust what we can do. But I think having those really open lines of communication when you are in a challenging environment is absolutely key, and having those really strong relationships with the people that you're working with, so that there's no fear of saying, we're not sure this is going to go right, or, oh, this is already gone wrong and we don't know what to do about it. We just want to know what is the status, and we can go for a new plan based on that, but we can't do anything with what we don't.
And also something about, everything is a choice, isn't it? you make a decision and there will be an outcome, and it was a choice to make that decision. I guess the thing about leadership and leading teams or being in different positions is actually then acknowledging, okay, I'm going to accept that this is the decision we've made, and the outcome will we understand what the risks, what the challenges are, what the opportunities, and being able to live with the results at the end is really key.
Exactly, yeah. And I think no matter what, like, we can have conversations till the cows come home and we can digest all of the possible things that could happen based on a decision. But I think, and I've experienced it quite a lot across the course of my career, even if you're in a smaller group of, say, 2 or 3 people who are trying to make a decision, most of you know from kind of the first 15 minutes of getting all of the facts out what is the right thing to do. So I often just think, look, we've made this decision based on the information that we have. We know the risk of what happens if it goes wrong, and we have usually an idea of what we can do if it is going to go wrong. But I think we should just go and see what happens.
I mean, totally agree as well. And on the flip side as well, are there any unexpected achievements? Because, girl, we're celebrating you in your career so far, and I'm confident there's more to come in terms of what you're going to achieve. What are some things that you're proud of so far?
I definitely think I've been kind of looking back and reflecting over the last couple of weeks. I try to do it semi-regularly, but I've been not so good at it of late. But looking back over the last few weeks, I do think that the packaging change that I implemented at Farfetch was huge. And I think at the time it was something that I started kind of the wheels in motion, and then it happened and I saw it tangibly with my own 2 hands and went, okay, this is great. But even then it was 6 months before I got to sit back and think, actually, you know what? I've just changed the packaging that's being received for one of our biggest boutiques. I've just changed the experience that a lot of our customers, repeat customers, very loyal customers are having on a day-to-day basis. And really importantly to me, I've just changed it in a way that makes this company more sustainable and makes what we're doing easier on the environment, which kind of can alleviate some of the pressure within the overall company, but also the pressure on yourself. I think everyone is always trying to do the best job that they can do, whether that be in terms of the quality of their work or the impact of their work, and being able to look back at that and say, this is a sustainable initiative, but it's also kind of sexy, and it experiences a whole new range of different customers and how they're going to interact with the brand. I think it was a really exciting achievement across the
That's
course of my career so
amazing. I
far.
mean, it means that you've sort of left the brand, but you've left, your touch, saying this is what I've achieved and it's going to be there for years to come. I mean, Farfetch is going through a lot at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how they come out the other side as well.
Definitely. Well, I hope to see them still thriving in years to come. Certainly, I hope to see my packaging still come into my hands when I place an order through the door. It still gives me a little shiver now when I get it.
So, Ellen, you've openly shared that you have autism spectrum disorder. So we're talking about neurodiversity now. And some view, I'm one of those, that neurodiversity is a superpower, while others, there are lots of naysayers out there, have seen it as a challenge. How do you personally perceive your neurodiversity, and how has that influenced your career journey?
Mine has been quite a challenge for me, I'll be totally honest. So I was diagnosed as entitled with autism spectrum disorder. It was around this time 2 years ago, in fact, and I think it's probably taken me 2 years to really get my head around it. I was obviously aware, I think in the way that we all are, of how having autism spectrum disorder can impact your day-to-day life and your routines and things like that. And I can remember when I was told this by a mental health professional, being horrified that she was telling me this news, and just feeling like this is something that's so out of my control. This is something that's going to go on for the rest of my life that I'm going to have to manage. And it really took me quite a long time to kind of come to terms with it. In hindsight, the thought that the control is what I went to straight away is absolutely laughable, because the control, I think, is how it manifests itself most prominently in my life. And my father, who was never diagnosed but extremely likely to have autism in the same way. So, when she said it, I was going, me, whose father is definitely autistic and whose brother has been diagnosed with autism, you think me? And she was like, yes.
You joining the club, yeah.
Yeah. So I think once I recovered from that reaction, I did spend a lot of time reading about being diagnosed as an adult, about autism generally, about autism in women. And I think it really opened the door of saying to me, Ellen, well, this is something that you were never going to have control over anyway, and it's something that you were going to have forever anyway. But at least now you've got kind of more resources available to you to help you understand how you navigate the world and how you navigate, particularly when it comes to work, which has been really, really helpful. In different ways, I think I've been seeing it. Certainly, I've seen the benefits and the downsides of it. So, for example, there have been instances where someone has definitely been trying to kind of take me down a peg, and that is just not registered at all with me. I'm like, well, they're just being helpful. They're trying to share helpful information instead of trying to be a little bit maybe passive aggressive or trying to kind of put me back in my place, which is very fascinating. But also, I think I've seen instances where I have been able to be more forthright and more honest and possibly a little bit overly brave when it comes to having conversations with senior leadership and having conversations with management, which has really helped to kind of progress that conversation. As for kind of the superpower conversation, I see it both ways. So definitely there are extremely significant benefits in the way that I kind of process the world and the way that I look at things. Similarly, there are downsides to that. So there are things that should be really straightforward that I find extraordinarily challenging. Like just recently I have this wonderful group of friends who are big huggers, and only recently have I been like, guys, we need to cut this out. One per interaction, please. Like, that's all I can manage. And I think little things like that there are definitely things where when you're networking, when you're in a business environment, they go without saying for neurotypical people, but the neurodivergent in me is going crazy. Like, my brain is buzzing over these should be simple things. So I think it does go both ways, but I have seen it certainly, and now that I'm starting to understand the way that I'm perceiving the world and the way that my brain is kind of operating a little bit better, I'm starting to see how I can leverage that and use that to my advantage, which has been a really exciting journey for me.
I mean, Ellen, it's amazing. We're all unique, we're all individuals. Everyone has got something different about them. And I think the difference is you have identified that and you've developed a high level of self-awareness and are then tapping into, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is where I need more help, support, which is with any human being out there. There is no one that is 100% in some way, shape, or form. So thank you for even sharing that and being vulnerable to share that story, because some people see it as something negative or something that they can't even talk about. But actually, you need to embrace every part of your armor and who you are as an individual. That's really important.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's something that I've really started to lean into within kind of my work, is being that full 100% myself, as cheesy as it sounds, being your most authentic self. Because I just think it's even, there have been instances in the past where I've been masking or where I haven't necessarily brought my full self to the table. And it is exhausting. It's so tiring that you're able to put in, 70% of yourself into your work. And that is absolutely all you can give, because that other 30% is being used up trying to respond correctly in social situations and trying not to cry because someone shook your hand. Whereas if you can bring that 100% of yourself to the table, it means that you're able to give so much more to your work and kind of throw yourself into it a lot more, which is what I found.
So let's talk about social settings. So, we met at a networking event, and networking plays, I think, a significant part, not just in career growth, but I think just getting out there and speaking to other people who are in similar industries, sectors, and sometimes taking away the madness that what you're going through in your organization, others are going through too, or maybe they've come out the other side. How do you approach networking, and do you see it as something important in your life as well?
Absolutely. I think I'm in a much better position in terms of knowing different people within the industry, But also in terms of just knowing what's going on within the industry from having those conversations that I was, 5 or 6 years ago. And my approach to networking has been a little bit slow to start, but I think I'm very much getting into it now. I am, contrastingly to what a lot of people think about autism, I'm very confident and very outgoing, so I can go into most social settings and kind of get the ball rolling at the very least. My mother says that she doesn't know what she did with her 3 children to give us all of this confidence, but it frightens her as adults. But I think that's part of it, and I will just go in and get the ball rolling and start having conversations, because I've realized that anyone who's going to those networking events, or even if it is just that you meet someone sort of by chance and begin having a conversation with them, they're there to do the same thing. They're also looking to meet people. So no one is, well, I'm sure there are an extraordinarily small number of exceptions. I have yet to meet one. No one doesn't want to talk to you just because of who you are or because of what your position is within a company. And I think being able to start those conversations has been really valuable for me to understand what's going on a little bit better within the industry and within retail as a wider sort of conglomerate. Sort of key thing for me certainly has been to get involved in more formal networking groups. So, for example, you and I met at an internet retailing dinner, which has been really invaluable for me. So I think if anyone was starting and looking at how can I kind of branch out and how can I start networking a little bit better, I would say that that's a really good place to start, is looking for more formal networking groups within the business that you work in, within the sector that you work in, so that you can start to have those conversations, but maybe someone else is putting in a little bit of the work to get it a little bit of structure before you go in.
Yeah, I totally agree about going into events where there's a bit of structure to it, because I think I remember a few years ago, my first ever networking event, it was where you showed up and they gave you badges and then you were supposed to start talking. And I was like, what do I say? Do I run through my CV? Do I say? And people would talk about where they said, which university did you go to? Da, 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 da. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is not me at all. Whereas I appreciate where there's a bit of a structure, it's a bit, but also loose, and realizing actually you're just getting to know people, and that's the first step. So, you're talking a bit about yourself, not divulging too much, but getting that conversation, sort of icebreakers, isn't it? And then taking it from there as well, I think is a good approach. But
yeah, exactly. I love that. And I think it's so nice to make those initial connections at a formal event like that. And you can then see, who are you going to have challenges in common with? Who are you working on similar projects to? Who works in a similar industry to you, so that you can start to then branch out and kind of deepen those connections. And then what I do personally is just do exactly that. Reach out and say, hey, it was so nice to meet you. It was really interesting to talk about this project or this initiative that you're working on. I'd love to hear more. And, I often think as well that I go with a little bit of a scattergun approach, because so few people have got time. I think at the moment, particularly, I'm speaking to people in retail and everyone is underwater. So if they ask me, fantastic. If they don't, we'll catch up, I'm sure, again in the future. But it's always worth it to reach out and make that initial connection afterwards.
I think that's it. The networking is it's an ongoing process where you reach out. You may have to reach out a few times. It might be you're just liking something that they posted that is in your industry, or you meet again in another event. It's something that builds up over time, and that's sort of you building your tribe, your circle within your industry, isn't it? Where there's similar values, interests, or projects that you're working on. It's a slow build, slow burn.
Exactly.
Have you had mentors? So mentors who've influenced you in your path? How is that impacting your development, if any? Or are you saying, oh, Mentola, that's not for me. I don't, don't believe in mentorship.
No, I do. I have a mentor at present. So I actually heard Sarah Russell talking with you about mentorship, and that it's difficult to know what you really want from a mentor. And I think that really, really resonated with me. I've had mentors through formal company programs in the past, and I really don't think that I knew what I was looking for, or what they knew what they were looking for to get out of it. And so without that bit of direction, I think it didn't really catch fire. I again kind of started to progress a little bit in my career, and I had started to attend networking events and started to kind of build up my network within retail, within the toy category, within fashion, when that's where I was. And when I was making these connections and thinking to myself, I really should buckle down and get myself a mentor and kind of do this the right way, which I was telling to one of my former colleagues, who very promptly put me up and said, Ellen, I think I am already your mentor. So sure enough, annoyingly, as she always is, she was right. So I have had her by my side for the past probably 2 years. I think what was missing for me in the past was, in my head, there's no formula for if you do this and you do that, then you're going to become the head of, or you're going to become a director, you're going to become the chief. So without that magic formula, I didn't really know what I was supposed to be looking for from a mentor. But with my current mentor, she's someone whose career and her inherent success as a result is fantastic and obviously extremely admirable. But I just think that what I really get from having her is the way that she conducts herself. So she really moves with purpose. She's very transparent. She's very clear with her expectations and her communication, and all of those skills that I'm not necessarily learning from someone else. I'm able to kind of look at her putting all of those and putting her integrity at the forefront of her decision making and her actions. I'll be able to say, okay, this is what I should be getting from a mentor, being able to kind of emulate the way that she's doing business, not necessarily the business that she's doing. And I think it's just been really exciting to have someone like that, because I think when I was younger, there was a certain view, I think, of women who were at a certain level that were, you kind of had to give up the fact that you were a woman, and it was all a little bit hollow. You weren't necessarily a whole person, whereas she's a whole person who's got personality and a sense of humor and kids, but she's also operating at a really high level and doing so in a way that's really clear and really concise and really engaging. And I think that's what I really look for, and that's what had been missing for me as a mentor in the past. So I'm hoping that I'm taking some of those skills and some of those traits from her and operating in my own business in that same way, but that remains to be seen. I hope she just can continue to help me grow.
But that's very interesting. Just listening to you now, is you have found your mentor because you've been able to, in your mind, clearly articulate the traits, the characteristics, the principles, the foundation of what you want a mentor to be and bring to you. Because going through it the other way and saying, actually, I'm looking for a mentor who's gone through this career step, head of, director, etc. That's no path is the same, and it's the foundations that will get you to where you're going, and your mentor is defining that as well. But you've also been able to clearly articulate what it is you're looking for as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that took me a really long time to understand that I don't necessarily just want to talk to someone who's the CEO, because exactly that, like, my own journey has not been day to day. It's not what I expect, let alone kind of when I look back at 5 years ago. So understanding that if I'm putting in place the ways that I want to operate and putting in place the ways that I want to come across within the businesses that I'm in, that will help me to get to wherever it is that I need to go, not necessarily just by going director, head of, CEO. So I think that's been a really exciting revelation as well for me, to be honest. It took probably longer than it should have, but we got there in the end.
You got there, and still more to come as well.
Definitely.
Let's talk about women's empowerment and breaking barriers. So as a woman in a leadership role, how do you champion women's empowerment? And what changes would you, Ellen, like to see in the industry? Because we've all faced, I'm sure, gender-related barriers. And if so, how did you navigate through them as well?
Sure. So for me personally, the gender-related barriers question, I had to take a little bit of time on. I wonder if that is something that I just bypassed. I think probably people have been trying to impose those barriers on me, but because I just can't recognize those social nuances,
you're just bulldozing through.
Just good enough luck. Yeah, I'm just going right ahead. But I can see that there are, and having conversations with other women, I definitely know that there are challenges within the industry, if we look at supply chain, if we look at logistics, but even going further out, still looking at retail, there's a certain expectation of where women plateau within that industry, which is just A, absolutely false, and B, really crazy to try and perpetuate for the next generation. So what I do is try to make time, and I do make time, often at my own detriment, to have conversations with women who are coming up. So whether that's looking at CVs, or whether that's discussing roles that could be right for them next, or how they're putting together their collection of achievements, because I think as well, people can be quite critical of themselves and don't necessarily look back at their own achievements with the same glowing sort of vision that other people do. So helping people to see, no, what you did there was fantastic. It was really cool. It brought in this element, and it brought in your management skills, and you were dealing with different stakeholders, and helping people to see the thing that they just achieved within their job was not just something to say, okay, great, that went fine, take that off, and now we're on to the next one. But to be able to look at it with an outsider's perspective and have a little bit more excitement about some of your achievements, which will then obviously correspond to how you are communicating those within your own business or within a new business if you're looking for a new role. So I think that's a huge part of what I do, is just to make time to have those conversations with friends, with colleagues, with peers. And I think in doing so, I've become what one of my friends has very recently told me is the ultimate hype woman, which is for me
Go
a huge
girl.
compliment.
We love that.
But I think for me, that's such a compliment and such a goal, that I want to be the person that can help people to see how excellent their own achievements have been and how amazing their journey has been so far. And to make sure that they're not having sort of limiting beliefs about where it goes next, because that can quite often be the case, particularly within logistics and supply chain for women. Is I'm having conversations and they're saying, well, I got as far as warehouse manager, that's probably where I stop. And I'm going, no, like, let's go further, let's think bigger. And just kind of having within groups of women, within whether that be peers or employees, having those conversations to say, where do you want to go? Like, let's pretend that anything is absolutely possible. Where do you want to go next, and how can we facilitate that happening?
I think that's so amazing, to be a champion and cheerleader for other women, especially in the sector. I was at an event last week where actually a woman was talking about supply chain and operations and how it's very male dominated. And one of the responses she got is, you have to find other events or other women who are not in the same company, who they do exist. I mean, there's you, there are a few others I could name as well, and just share best practice, or find your tribe within that industry where you can champion each other and celebrate each other's accomplishments. And then also know, this is actually the direction my career can go, because when you're insulated within your day-to-day, you don't see the possibilities, isn't it? Because you're just getting the job done, getting through the next project, and being able to have someone else see the value and the opportunity that you could achieve within your career and moving forward, I think is so important.
Exactly. I think that's a huge part of it. And certainly I had women when I was kind of starting out in logistics and distribution, modeling that for me, to say, this could be somewhere where actually I go really far, where I build my career within logistics and supply chain, which isn't often offered as an option, to be quite transparent. And I know that within that, I've had women that have worked in warehouses for me that as soon as I met them have been like, okay, you are going to be the big boss here. This is a big, exciting opportunity for you to really take the reins on something that has been so male dominated for such a long time, but that you have such an affinity for. And I think it's just helping to get that visibility of those options and those opportunities out there, which is what certainly I've been trying to do over the last couple of years.
And also big up to all the women working in logistics, supply chain and distribution. I have worked with so many, and they're the ones who actually get the product to the customers.
I don't want to take all the credit, but they are the ones getting the stuff done.
Exactly.
The women in warehouses are they're running the whole show.
Yeah. Let's talk about self-care and work-life balance, or just balance, according to Ellen. We know And we've been told that balancing your personal life, stress levels is crucial. You have to take care of you first. What rituals or practices keeps you grounded, Erin?
I am not so good at this, but I've gotten better, I think, over the last few years. So there's a couple of things that I do all the time that I do find really help me. And one of them started when we were locked down in COVID. And that's to do a fake commute. So I used to drive maybe like 20 minutes to get to my work. Or if I was in the office, I would be on the train and then it's about a 20-minute walk from the station to our office. I said, okay, well, why don't I take those 20 minutes instead of, just sitting on the couch and watching whatever is on TV? Take those 20 minutes and do a fake commute. So I go out, walk around the block for 20 minutes. I've got my tea in my hand. I get some exercise, get some fresh air. And I think that it really detaches me from being in my house. So I'm no longer just living in my house. I've gone out the door. I'm on my way to work. And I think that once I get back, I've got a little bit of exercise in, I've got a little bit of fresh air. I'm ready to kind of take that step into work mode, because I think it can be quite difficult to delineate your life from your work life, particularly if you're working at home or if you're hybrid, so you're working at home a couple of days a week. I find that to be really invaluable, and a strange practice, I will admit, because I am like properly stomping like I would be if I were walking from the station to the office. But it really just gets the blood flowing, and I think gets my brain into that space of ready to turn on. And similarly, I do the same thing at the end of the day. So literally a 20-minute stomp around the block where you've left work, you are officially sort of logged off, and you can start to kind of put all of those posts that are the grace to bed, whether it be just for 20 minutes or whether it be for the night, and then you go back up in tomorrow morning. I do think that it's been really, really helpful from that perspective. The other things that I do are to recognize within myself what my brain is doing. And this, I think, has been a lot more challenging and a lot more work intensive. But during sort of 2021, where the world was starting to get back a little bit to some semblance of normal, we were starting to go into the offices again. I did get to the point at which I thought I actually can't even lift my head off the pillow. Like I've done too much, I've put too much pressure on myself, and now the whole thing has come crashing down. And at the time, I was thinking, why do I just suddenly, this has happened seemingly overnight? Why do I feel so bad about this? Why am I just not able to cope with any of this anymore? But looking back, there are definite signs that you're starting to kind of go down that path and you're starting to reach the limit of what you can take, whether that be in terms of work or whether that's in terms of everything just going on all around you. And I started to really recognize those signs in myself and to say, okay, we're getting full now. We're almost at breaking point here. Why don't we just take a step back, have a little bit of an easier day, communicate what's going on to your team and just say, look, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to have a lighter meeting day today. I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to figure all of this out, and hopefully it won't all snowball. And I think just recognizing those signs in yourself has been a huge game changer for me as well, of understanding when is the time to say, I'm going to take a little break now so that I don't need to take a longer break in a week's time when everything comes crashing down. And those are the two that I've put in place. I know that there are 1,000 things that I should be doing, like mindfulness, like having a tidy desk, like all of this different stuff. But I think those are the only two that have worked for me with consistency. And I think that's part of it, as well as finding what genuinely works for you and what are you not just doing because someone else has told you that it's a good idea.
But also you've identified two things, and even just, working hard on those two is very important. Chris Williamson, who does the podcast More Than Wisdom, he talks highly of and recommends sunlight before screen time. So that thing of getting out the house, not being on your phone, embracing nature, just taking that walk before you get sucked into your meetings, the work, etc. And then the same thing in the evening, so that you can separate and differentiate, day and night, and just taking the space to embrace that time with you is really key. And I loved what you said about dialing up the dials, or when to dial up in terms of, okay, let me give 100%, and when to dial down and say, right, it's time to take a step back. And it might be a lighter day, it might be a lighter meeting week, just making sure that you can come back to being your full self and be at your full potential, isn't it, to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think recognizing it in yourself is one thing. The communication piece, I think, for me has always been the harder part of that, is to say to someone, I'm having a little bit of a challenging week, so I'm going to do X or Y. But I think people's expectations have changed a lot over the few years as to what you're going to put up with and what people are able to actually manage. So not only in doing so can you manage people's expectations in terms of what they are going to get from you that week, but I think as well, just having that more open line of communication, it helps build the relationships within your team, whether that's your employees or your manager. It helps just keep, I think, the whole system operating if everyone has got an idea of where you're at in terms of, is it a 10 and you're feeling great and you're going to absolutely smash this out today, or is it a 6 and you need to kind of take a little bit of a step back?
Looking ahead, what exciting developments do you envision for your career? Are there specific goals you're working towards? And sustainability is a very big part of what you've discussed, your purpose, I think, and your vision. How do you plan to make an impact in your current sector?
Tell me a question. This is the one that, when you get to an interview and they ask, where do you want to be in 5 years? I always say, I have no idea.
Girl, you might be thinking about just the next 5 months, and that's okay. You don't have to have a 5-year plan.
No, I think so. Definitely sustainability stays at the center of everything that I'm trying to do. Had you told me that when I finished my degree, I would have said I never want to speak about sustainability again, but it snuck its way in, and I think it sneaks its way back out into the work that I'm doing. So I definitely have got some exciting projects and some exciting initiatives in mind for the Lego group, which is, I think, even to say that is such an exciting thing for me now, as to say I'm looking at exciting sustainability opportunities within the Lego group, within such an iconic brand, within such a well-known, reputable global brand. So no matter what you deliver, it's going to be huge, even if it's tiny. So I do definitely have some exciting initiatives coming up over the next 2 years or so with the Lego group. And then for me personally, the answer, as always, is I have no idea. So I had no idea that I was going to be in this role 18 months ago. I had no idea that I was ever going to work for Farfetch if you would have asked me 5 years ago. I want to continue to grow and to learn. And I think that's what's really exciting about where I am now, is there is so much to learn. And so it will be quite some time, I think, until I get bored. But that's always my ultimate opportunity, is to keep pushing myself out of my comfort zone, keep making sure that I'm growing, I'm learning, and that alongside that, the things that I'm delivering for my employer, whoever they may be, are exciting, are sustainable, and are something that's maybe a little bit sexy. I always like to have something that's people are going to recognize and be like, "Oh, that's cool." So those are, I think, my overall ambitions, and how they manifest themselves. Who knows what that looks like over the next couple of years.
Well, you've already set the foundation by being open to learn and being curious. That is the biggest part of it. Having, interviewed 49 women on this podcast, interestingly enough. That's really crazy. Yeah. So so it's actually going to be episode 50. So we're getting that halfway mark. And everyone has said, be open to experiences, being open to learn, being curious is what has been a big catalyst for the direction that their career has taken. So you're already in the right trajectory then there.
I hope so. I think so. Every time that I kind of take a pulse on it, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. We're still learning, we're still growing, and we still have something to offer. Everything's going okay here.
Exactly. So we're now down to what we call the Trailblazer takeaway tips. So I asked the guests to share 3 tips that they would share with their audience, what they would tell their younger self, or someone who's listening right now who's inspired by your journey, your story. 3 Trailblazer takeaway tips for them to take away.
Sure. My first one, and I think I tell myself this all the time, I tell my friends this all the time, even if you're not qualified, go for it. There is study, it's been relentlessly quoted over the last 10 years or so that men will apply for a role if they've only got 60% of the qualifications, but women will do so if they've got 100%. I think we need to take a leaf out of men's book, which I don't say very often, and just go for it. The worst thing that's going to happen is that they say, no, you're not the right fit for this. But the best case scenario is that you end up outside of your comfort zone, which is always a nice place to be. You end up learning a lot, you end up growing, and you end up getting all of this experience that you would never normally have had if you waited until you met the criteria exactly. So I would say, even if you're not qualified, go for it. And I can show you an email where I applied for a CEO position when I was 26 that will attest to that being my motto.
You need to frame that, Ellen. You need to frame that. So when
Honestly,
you
the
are
dream was
CEO,
strong.
what was the role?
It was CEO of a small, they did like makeup boxes delivered to your house, but it was way before Glossier or anything like that. It was this tiny company. I'd say they probably
It
had
was a
8
startup.
employees,
Yeah.
which is why I thought, well, let's be a role with them.
I love it. I love it.
My second one, I think, would be to look back at your achievements regularly and think about what you would say to a friend if they were their milestones. So like I mentioned, I think we can be so critical of ourselves and so desperate to move on to what's next, that we don't always take the time that we deserve to look back and say, that was really great. We did a fantastic job on that. I did that and it was badass. And I think that we need to do more of that. And then I think my final one is, and this has been a long time coming for me personally, is to recognize what success looks like for you. So had you asked me 5 years ago, it would have just been money, 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 money. Whereas now, kind of, I'm looking at things and saying, okay, maybe that you're living a happy life and you've got a good balance, you're excited about the work that you do. Maybe all of those things are what success really means. And maybe it's not always just one thing. It's not just the money that you make. It's not just your title. It can be how excited and how passionate you are about your work, which can be a little bit nebulous, or I think is equally, if not more important than some of those other more tangible things.
Love it. Ellen, this has been an amazing conversation and good to delve into your world to see what has shaped your career so far, especially in the logistics distribution sector, which I think is really important as well, to shine a light on women such as yourselves. And I've been inspired, and I hope that you have, and I'm sure you've inspired a woman out there, young, old. There is no barrier to which you can learn. It's been a pleasure.
Gosh, I hope so. It's been so nice to talk, Tola. Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure. Right, for the audience, this has been the Trailblazers Experience podcast. You know where to find us, but please, I'm going to ask a favor because I never ask for favors. I'd like you to follow, subscribe. We are on all streaming platforms. We're also on YouTube as well. And tell another woman about the podcast. Until then, thank you.